Let's turn our attention to Jimmy Carr and this question of whether or not he's finished his career. Has he really been cancelled? I suspect actually his Netflix stand-up special is probably doing quite well. After he made a joke about the Holocaust and referred to the murder of Gypsies. That was basically the punchline of the joke. And it's been condemned by lots of groups, Holocaust Memorial Day Trust, Auschwitz Memorial, Hope Not Hate. What have you made of it, Danny?
Well, look, if he'd swapped that around and he'd said, the great positive out of it would have been all the Jews dying, that I immediately looked at that joke that way and just thought, not just theoretically, but I realised in the insult given to the death of Roma people, everybody who was involved in the Holocaust or related to it in any way was being grotesquely insulted. So the first thing is there isn't really a question. It was a completely inappropriate joke, and it's not a defense of it that it was funny. In fact, that makes it worse. If he argues that it was funny, he's arguing that the right thing to do is to laugh at people being killed in a genocidal act. So I thought it was grotesque in every way. I think it should be possible to act in the following way. The first is to signal our disapproval to Jimmy Carr and publicly our solidarity to the people who've been offended by it, and to redouble our efforts to understand about the Roma element of the Holocaust, which I think people didn't know about as much. I think the right thing to do is to suggest to Netflix that they might not want to make money out of that joke, and therefore they might consider removing it. Personally, I'm not a big fan of Jimmy Carr anyway, so this doesn't come up. I think anybody who listens to Jimmy Carr should at least evaluate how funny they regard him to be. But what I don't think is the case is that as a result of it, you should say, anything that Jimmy Carr ever said in the past, anything that he ever says in the future should be eradicated. People can say stupid, wrong, offensive, horrible things, and still be human beings who have lives and say things, and not everything they say is valueless. Yeah. We ought to be able to show some sense of judgment and proportion as well.
David, I know, because having read his book and listened to him on podcasts and other things, but I know that Jimmy Carr, and I not in this particular case, but in the past, he has said that part of what he's doing, it is called His Dark Materials, his show, is to sort of push and test what audiences are willing to laugh at, which I suspect is what he's doing here, but perhaps this time he's overstepped the mark.
I'm sorry. I mean, there's a word that I can't use on air to describe that kind of argument. The first thing is, Jimmy Carr is not, as far as I know, from the Roma or Sinti people. So he's making a joke about people who he's not. It's almost certain that the people he was talking to in the audience, almost none of them were Roma or Sinti people or knew anything about it. So this was essentially a joke about, actually, it's a good thing to kill gypsies because none of us like them. Isn't that really kind of funny? And isn't it, by the way, also very daring? Larry David in Curb Your Enthusiasm does jokes which concern the Holocaust in some kind of a way, which are pretty near the knuckle. But they are actually, but they're funny because it's a Jew telling them, and a lot of Jews would understand them and so on. And they're not jokes, if you like, aimed at a minority of people who we're supposed to dislike. I actually regard a joke like this as giving a license to people to hate other people. I really do. It's funny to do it. It's okay to do it.
I agree with you, David.
Yeah. And frankly, I don't care what happens to Jimmy Carr. If that's what he thinks his material is, if he thinks that's the way in which people should be treated, and if some of his audience thinks they're funny, I don't care what happens to any of them. If he's cancelled, I don't give a damn. If he wants to be like that about people, and incidentally, relatives of whom are still alive, of course they are, and probably living in this country, and people who identify with them are alive and living in this country, and so on. Yeah, and as Danny absolutely rightly says, the more funny you think it is, the worse it is, because the more you think it's justified to laugh at what terrible things that happen to other people because you think they're not real people like you.